Family Pictures Podcast. I'm Michael Branson Smith here with
Jim Groom.
Well, we're on our final Hitchcock film, The Birds. The Birds.
The Birds. Not to be confused with The Bears.
And, you know, we've been putting our listeners through the ringer of a little bit of edge of horror, definitely thrillers. And this is our 59th podcast as well, by the way. Right.
We're just knocking them dead.
And for our final Hitchcock film, we are going to be witnessing the many, many, many roles that, in particularly, Tippi Hedren's character plays, but also everybody else that just doesn't quite fit in the spaces that they were allotted in this idea of the past family trying to become modern, and the birds are here to shake it all up and make them deal. At least that's how I read it.
Yeah, exactly. Now we know what the birds mean to you.
Yeah, yes. But we should start with some of our classic, production notes. I think I just picked out ones that were fun and one that's not so fun. I loved how this is actually partly inspired by a real mass bird attack from 1961 on the town of Capitola, California. And it turned out the birds had all been ingesting toxic algae. And so that drove them mad and made them attack people. But of course, at the time it felt like it was biblical, it felt very biblical, but in reality it was like modern society being punished for the ills against nature.
You could argue, it's not going to be where we go with this, but you could definitely argue one of the early eco horror films.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Day After lives in my heart every day. That we'll have to do eco horror with The Day After leading the way, which is a terrible, awesome film. And as part of to balance this this eco horror, screenwriter Evan Hunter was picked to pitch some screwball comedy stuff in there. And my favorite by far, literally laughed out loud, is when the attack in I want to say Botany Bay. That's so funny. When the attack on Bodega Bay happens, it starts with a seagull knocking out a gas attendant. It's really, really funny. And then the rockin' birds in the Aston Martin, that are tilted.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah, one of my first gifts for DS-106 was.
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. Well, this is a famous DS-106 movie poster that I did. I animated this poster. You can find it. Just do animated movie poster of the birds, and it will be the one that I made, most likely. Which leads to, there were some really cool, special effects. This was like an early special effects movie. And you literally have the master of iWorks from Disney Studios that basically did all the matte work, and they used this old technique of using something sodium vapor process versus like a blue screen, because if you use it just makes a better silhouette, which was kind of cool. And then also an early electric synthesizer, for all the bird sounds, was all this cool electric synthesizer stuff. So
it is strange. We're not going to really talk about the technical innovations of Hitchcock, but they just keep on coming from film to film to film. Like he is always doing something else or trying something else, which is really impressive. But I was wondering, why use the birds as electronic music? Like, what was the kind of idea there?
Yeah, I don't know, like to make them seem otherworldly, right? To take them out of their natural space, right? That they are. There's obviously all the fluttering and flapping. I think that's natural recorded stuff. And boy, this film, we can add this, hundreds and thousands of birds on set. It was nuts how many freaking birds they actually had. Man, the amount of poop that must have been on that soundstage.
Cleaning up after a set on this, scene on this was not fun, right?
No, it must have been brutal. But on the bad side, we've been we've been on this roll of Hitchcock's our feminist of the month movie series, but no,
it's dead with this one.
Yeah, he was really, really nasty to the Tippi Hedren. This was her first movie, and it's a tough story because she very much, like many women do, tried to avoid talking about it for many, 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 many years. And she was a protege of Hitchcock. He was his next blonde after Grace Kelly, basically, and he praised her as like better than Grace Kelly even. And but he was incredibly possessive on set of her. He wouldn't let anybody else talk to her. He would make sure that when he would be able to talk to her in private, and even and this is from the many years later interview with her. She described how he once told her, I dreamed of you telling me I love you. You love me, and she's just like, that's a dream, Hitch. Like, and even to the point of propositioning, like asking her to touch him and like making sure no one else could hear it. And so that's sad. And it went on into Marnie, and she was so sick of it that she refused to work for him. And even though she was in contract, and she ruined his career, he ruined her career. Basically, she didn't get to work for many years. Keeping her on the shelf, as you will, as you could back then, because
Yeah.
they didn't go contract film by film. Um, and then it just to even in one of her breaking point in The Birds itself was the final scene, that the scene in the attic, which we're going to be talking about, of course. And Hedren heard that he was going to work with mechanical birds, and there's some really funny mechanical and puppet birds in this movie, particularly the ones that attack the what's his name? Oh man, I got to be ready for this. Mitch, yeah, through the window. It's really funny. But instead, they had wranglers wearing heavy gloves, throwing dozens of crows and seagulls and ravens at her for 4 days straight. And they were apparently their beaks were rubber banded, but one still like gouged, was able to
Oh
like
my God.
scrape and gouge her cheek and almost take out an eye. And the doctor was like, whoa, stop. And we got to give her a week to rest. And Hitchcock was really pissed off because it's like, she's the only one left for us to film. And it's like, the doctor's like, are you trying to kill her? And so this has an ugly side, sadly, as part of this story that we're going to get into.
Yeah, I mean, this story is in some ways about hangups and the past, and I think we're seeing that the hangups of Hitchcock himself. He
Yeah.
talks a lot about birds, and a lot about that. And for example, in Psycho, and it's almost like he's letting out some of his own, psychosis here. Uh,
Yeah.
with what we learned that would happen behind the scenes, right? Because before it was like he was a co-writer with his wife, him and his daughter. Like we were like, this is great, and like he's
Yeah.
giving the voices. And in this one, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. He's
we
given
have to
giving
talk about him.
he's given Doris Day like a voice again, and looking back at her career, which I think we'll talk about those characters and how great some of those female characters were in those movies we've done. And even this character,
Yeah,
man, he puts, as he did in real life, apparently, he puts the Melanie Daniels character through the ringer, played by Tippi Hedren. This is very much, in my mind, a story about her basically being compelled to play these very various roles, and how her original role, even her founding role, where she's like this flashy socialite with her Aston Martin, her fur coat, driving fast. She's the wild girl that danced naked in the fountain in Rome,
allegedly.
allegedly. And it lingers like it's a reputation more than fact, but she kind of lives with it. Like she has no care because she's the daughter of a wealthy, newspaper man, right? He owns the San Francisco Observer or something like that. And it's Mitch who tries to immediately, and this is the thing, like the Mitch character who they're introduced. Why don't you walk us? How are they introduced to us?
One of my favorite I mean, there are so many, but like one of my favorite openings of a Hitchcock film is this one where Melanie walks into a bird store in Hitchcock. We get the sighting of Hitchcock walking in
Yeah.
with his two dogs and comes into the bird store, and she's looking to buy lovebirds. No, she's looking to buy a particular bird for her aunt, I believe, coming back from Europe.
It's a
But
mina.
it's a minor. There you go. And she's waiting for these lovebirds to come in. They don't come in. So she's like, no, you're just going to have to deliver them. The woman doesn't want to. And so she goes in the back and she's like, let me just call one time because I'm sure they're going to be, maybe they're even en route right now. So she goes out to make a call. And in the interim, um, our Mitch, played by Rod Taylor, comes up. And immediately there's this recognition, in fact, that he knows who she is because she is somewhat famous because of that page 6 socialite stuff.
Right.
And so he kind of plays a gag on her. He basically, starts saying, I'm looking for lovebirds. But rather than the gag is not so much like, I know who you are, la, la, la. The gag is kind of what happens between them, the whole relationship.
Right.
He immediately starts cross-examining her like a
Yeah.
lawyer. It's such a
Yeah.
weird, like immediately she's on the defensive and he's basically second guessing her, asking her this. And there's always these cross-examinings between characters throughout the movie, which is super interesting about like this sense of trust or where are we in this relationship or even between the mother. So anyway, that's where we are. That sets us up. We're in
And
the
it's
bird shop.
Yeah,
Bam.
and it's really important because, like, your romantic comedies of the, especially the modern types, like you think of like Harry Met Sally. That sparring is that method of finding, oh, these are improbable
Yeah.
partners of their future. Like they're so different, but they're so contrasting. They have incongruous personalities. How could they ever be together? But of course, we know they're going to end up together. But what's so funny about this is there's no emotional release. Like, so what makes those like Nora Ephron scripts so successful is whenever they're mean to one another, usually right after that, there's either like an expression of regret or some sort of expression of regret, even in the context of the sparring, right? And there's none of that. And for the most part, and this is where the beginning of like where Tippi Hedren's role, where it exists in the one of the roles that she plays, is I found it very much like he was constantly scolding her too, like she was a
Yeah.
petulant teenager, it's like, get in that, the one that's in there, back to your gilded cage, Melanie Daniels, like she's like a child. Go to your room, young lady. You've misbehaved jumping in all those fountains in Rome and driving that Aston Martin too fast and always showing up in the wrong outfits, wearing fur coats to fishing towns,
Well, the other thing too there is like, she does because she's put in that role, she plays back. So
Yeah.
immediately what she
Mhm.
does after he, kind of, gets her, he walks out, she gets his license plate, and then
Yeah.
she's like, "Well, I'm not done with this. I'm going to one up you. Like I'm going
Yeah.
to get you back now." And then there's this kind of escalation between them like, she goes and she essentially finds out where he lives, buys the lovebirds that he's looking for, but never gets because he has more fun, it seems, like, catching her in a lie than actually, buying the lovebirds for his sister is what she came in to do. And so that's the next piece. It kind of is what moves the story along.
Right. And so as they move, into this space, um, she's like, what I love about her character for this first, like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or so, is she's just like on a heater. Like she moves from space to space to space, uninterrupted. Nothing gets in her way. Like when she enters town and she's talking to the general store man who's looking at her like everybody in town looks at her like she's an alien,
Yeah.
right? Because she's dressed so smartly. She's driving this fancy European car, and he's like, well, you're going to need a boat. And she's like, okay, give me the boat. Like, I'll outboard motor, no problem. I can do that. And like, so she's been brought up to be very independent in a lot of ways, which is interesting at the same time. And she takes this boat across the island to enter Mitch's world where his family lives, just happens to be on the other side of the other side of the lake, if you will. And she hops out of the boat without a beat. She doesn't struggle at all, and she,
Exactly.
which is
She even takes her
amazing.
purse,
Yeah,
mindfully
she
grabs her purse.
yeah, which she doesn't even need, and then she leaves the birds with the note to the daughter Kathy, and it's just like on and on and on, and then finally, boom, on the way back after, it's so cute because like Mitch sees her from with his binoculars and he jumps in his car and starts racing around town to beat her back as she's taking the boat back to the dock in Bodega Bay, and she gets hit and her
Yeah.
streak is finally broken. She gets hit by a seagull, and to exemplify this, she's bloodied by Hitchcock. She's like, "You're this role, that one's done."
Yeah, we're slowing your ass down now.
Yeah.
Tell you, this reminds me of something. And do you know, like, do you not know? Do you, when you were watching, did you realize, like, before the bird actually hits her, she kind of tilts her head to the side and is like playing a little bit coy. And as soon as she does that, bam, the
Yeah.
seagull nails her. And it was funny because me and Antonella were walking around Milan yesterday, right? And there was this like, older, attractive mom, and or I don't know, attractive or not, but like, you know what, an older mom and her kid dancing around her on the streets of Milan, saying, "Mommy this, mommy that." And the mother was like taking these crazy like selfies,
Oh
like
my god.
ignoring the kid altogether, but with that same face as Melanie Daniels, like, oh, coyly in front of like, the
Mhm.
Duomo or whatever. The kid's like, "Mom, come in, mom, come in." There's no acknowledgement at all. And not that it necessarily ties in, other than that face Melanie Daniels is making there of this coy, "Hi, Mitch. Here we are. We're kind of still going back and forth, like you said,
Right.
and having our little escalation of the arm race of kind of, a little bit of getting to know each other, if you will, is all broken, right? It's like the facade of all that is broken when that bird hits.
Yeah.
Like it's a new relationship now.
Right. And it's a new Melanie too, because she slides like, and this is the beginning of her sliding even more clear because Lydia shows up. So she gets brought into the diner. And the diner owner is really funny because he's like, whoa, 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 that didn't happen just outside.
It's worried about a lawsuit.
Yeah, it's really funny. But anyway, but they're all caring for her in this nice way. But Lydia shows up, the mother, Mitch's mother, and let's talk for a moment because I think this fits in our story of American history. So Lydia is the mother of Mitch. Mitch is clearly in his 30s, right? He's got to be early 30s.
It's
Would you
hard because
say?
his sister is like 11.
Literally 11. Yeah,
Yeah.
literally 11.
So
And
what is he, 25 at most?
no way. I think he's got to be. So my theory is this. So this is the oddness of this
Go
family.
to.
This family, so we learn later that the patriarch of the family is dead. The Mr. Brenner is no longer. And yeah, Mitch is, I can't, well, maybe late 20s. So he's like he's their depression baby, right?
Uh,
And Kathy is their like post World War II, we're back, baby.
baby boom, baby.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So that's my guess. I don't know. But it's really weird and it's not talked about at all. It's more like they're there as props just to tell the story.
But it,
Um,
it also works with probably another place you're going to go. Like Mitch can just as well double as dad as
exactly.
he
Yeah.
can as, brother
Yeah. And that's a
or
very
son.
important part, right? Because as Lydia shows up, she is super cold. She could not be more interested in Melanie whatsoever. And so we start to slowly learn about this in part through not at this moment, but Annie, who is Annie Hayworth, who's the town's like school teacher. It's still like, and that's the other thing is the
So
school classroom is still a single classroom, right? It's like multiple grades. They're there's two moments like that one and another one where it's like they're just pretending like it's like the 20s or something like that. I mean, there's at one point when Bodega Bay is attacked, there's literally out of nowhere like a horse and carriage like pops out of from the, it's like it time portals into the scene. You're like, where the fuck did that come
yeah,
from?
that is the craziest scene. And it's like, what? It almost came out of the 19th century.
Exactly, and that's what it feels like this school is like too. But that's jumping ahead to a certain extent. So anyway,
But the
so
point you made there
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just going to stop for a second because I think it's interesting. It's like before she even goes to Mitch's house, she goes to Annie Hayworth's house.
Right.
And we introduce a whole nother. So we get the mother who's cold and like, what is your situation here? How do
Yeah.
you know him? Like, she's immediately doing the math. Like, are you two
Right.
going to get in a relationship? But the same thing happens when she goes to visit Annie.
Right. And
The
we've
same calculations are going on.
right. And Annie, we learn like was how she figured out Kathy's name, because there's this like kind of slapstick moment where the shopkeeper and another guy, and they're like, her name's Marge, or like they're
Alice?
bumbling her, Alice, yeah, and they're bumbling her name, and they're basically like, you got to go ask the school teacher. So she had already introduced herself to Annie, and even that situation was awkward because like, who's this strange beautiful woman? And it's very much, we learn later, it's because I was that strange beautiful woman, right?
But the other thing too about the shopkeeper, and I'm sorry to keep on going
Oh,
down these
he was
little,
great.
he was like out of a Coen Brothers movie, right? Mhm. What? Like,
Yeah, you
like,
betcha.
yeah, exactly. Like from Fargo. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just he was such a great character. Anyway,
And so, Annie enters the picture as we get another lie, right? First was the lie that, she was willing to play Melanie was with Mitch as the bird shop kind of attendee. And now she's pretending like Annie Hayworth is an old friend, again, not knowing that he was in a relationship with her many years ago, or years ago, maybe not too long ago. And she had made her way from San Francisco to be with him and had stayed in San Francisco, pining after him, basically.
yeah,
Um, you
she
know,
just wants to be close to him.
exactly. Yeah. Well, that's another theme we might explore in a future set of pictures, Jim.
It's going to go in a whole different way.
Yeah. And so she's invited to the home. No, she's invited to dinner. That's what it is. So she's invited to dinner, and Lydia's like, "Oh, really? That's not a good idea," you know.
But what do you think about that? Because Mitch is almost in a strange moment doing the same thing he was doing to Melanie in the bird store to
Yeah.
his mother. Right? Like he's kind of like setting his mom up and he's like to Melanie, like, wink, wink, we invited you over. Wink,
Oh,
wink.
right, right,
Like
right.
almost knows it's gonna piss his mom off,
Oh, he totally
right?
knows. Yeah.
And he's still having fun with it
Yeah, I don't get Mitch's character, to be honest, in a lot of
at
ways. Like,
all.
what is his motivations are. Like, I know the only one that's somewhat clear is he knows he's supposed to be this replacement in the family, even though he's not really owning it. He lives in San Francisco. He's a lawyer, which we learn pretty soon. And he comes basically every weekend to try to hold together what he knows is a family falling apart once his father died. And you would imagine it's in large part because he wants to make sure that his little sister, much younger little sister, doesn't get completely swallowed by the moroseness of Lydia. So, but at the same time, he's there, and he's kind of literally gathering bodies, like, with Annie, not sticking around, and even though he's all the way back in San Francisco, and his mother, who thinks he's like supposed to be the person that fills the void left by his father. And obviously you would imagine Kathy sees him, even though it's not really explicitly explored, as the person that's like guiding her, because Lydia is so emotionally unavailable,
Yeah,
quite a bit, right? And
I
I think
agree.
I think that's a really important part, because as they go back, gosh, there's so many bird attacks. I get so confused. So, they come to dinner, and the dinner's very awkward. Oh, and the sparring kind of escalates, I think, is a
Yeah.
big part of that. Because, first Mitch is having this awkward conversation with his mother, and she's kind of like, "Oh, she's an interesting girl." And he's like saying, "Oh, mother, you're not the lawyer, I am, right? Don't interrogate her." But she does bring up the, like, "I heard she jumped in the pond." Like,
I
everybody's
might
reading
be
page
old
6.
fashioned,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
she's the one who was nude in a Roman,
Yeah.
lake. I mean, not lake, fountain. I mean,
Yeah.
this is
And
terrible.
and that's what's so awkward too, is, as you said, like, immediately, like, what's Mitch's motivations? Because as he's like chiding his mother for saying these things, he uses his mother as a proxy to say
Totally.
these things, to mirror these things right onto Melanie, and says like, "Mother tells me you like to swim," and this, of course, pisses her off. She's like, "What the fuck, man?
Yeah,
Like, you
that's
know,
uncool, right? And
yeah,
again, to your point, which is a good one, like, Mitch, you think there's gonna be a point in which he breaks, but he's always just attacking her.
yeah,
And then once he attacks her, maybe kind of like Hitchcock was off screen, he kind of like smiles and like, I
yeah,
still want to see you though. I
yeah,
still
yeah,
like you a lot. And she's
yeah,
like, you're an asshole.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I want to go back to, hang out with Annie because
right,
you're a jerk. And so there's this weird, like Mitch. My feeling about Mitch is he's almost a proxy himself to put these women all in relationship with one another. Annie, Melanie, the mom, and Kathy or Veronica Cartwright, who I love, and Alien. So
yeah,
like this whole idea is like Mitch, they might all circle around him, but in essence, he's just this kind of like pain in the ass they have to go through to kind of negotiate with one another. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Because it's really about all their situations and lots in this world right now.
yeah. I mean, and I think like, yeah, no, I think there's something about Mitch that when the attack finally happens on the house, he has this one role and he does it admirably until he falls asleep. But we'll talk about that later. But this is when as you're exploring, it's when Annie's kind of moment happens with Melanie, because she goes back to stay with Melanie. Sorry, Melanie goes back to stay with Annie, and it's here we learn about Annie's relationship with Mitch and Lydia, because it's really wonderful because Annie's playing this like, so what was Mitch's mom like?
And everyone's always saying, I don't mean to be so mysterious, but
Yeah, and it's really hard because there's these things she talks about. She eventually admits like, I was the other woman, and she's like, when she first met Lydia, she was equally cold, and she's like, I spent days trying to figure out exactly what she did wrong. And then at the same time, a beat later, she said, but we're great friends now,
yeah,
because she's not a threat anymore, most likely, if you think about it. Um, and she's the one who spells out, like, she kind of like, this is just so you all know, if you didn't know what the subtext is, I'm going to spell out the text. She's like, yeah, no, she's not afraid of losing Mitch. She's afraid of being abandoned. And
yeah,
so, and she's like, oh, okay, we get it. Like, this is a woman who's basically never gotten over the death of her husband. And there is a wonderful moment when she does speak about him
yeah.
soon after, and we'll be talking about that because it's a really important, I think, speech within the film.
It's also interesting that this whole idea of abandonment, her being older, even though she has an 11-year-old kid, you really do feel like she's older. And
Yeah,
there's that sense of we did that whole series where it was about, parents being abandoned and
yeah,
what that meant. And there is obviously that, but there's also the figure of the mother, which obviously after Psycho, you can't ignore in Hitchcock. And
right.
she's sitting there as she meets Melanie for the first time. And like you get a sense, like if she could, she might get that knife and attack Melanie to keep her
Mother,
away from
oh
Mitch.
God, mother.
So there was all this crazy, and
Yeah,
this movie was hard to read because it was going in so many different directions. After
yeah,
all these talked, I'm like, I don't know. Like he's just like throwing his themes off the wall, seeing what
yeah.
sticks.
Yeah, and it's more like he's throwing Melanie against the wall and bouncing her into different spaces is probably really the better way of thinking about it, because this is in this scene ends with the bird moment, I'd say number 3, if you will. And I'm ignoring the lovebirds thing as like they're a fixture, I get it, but it's like the
Yeah.
attacking birds I'm way more interested in. And there's a seagull that kamikazes into Annie's front door, and they're like, oh. Wow.
Exactly. That's
Wonder
so
what that
weird. And
yeah.
it's a full moon.
Yeah. And I'd forgotten how as Mitch was, like, dumping on Melanie yet again as she was leaving to go to Annie's house right before this scene, there's literally the birds are gathering on all the you know, the lines, the phone lines and
Yeah.
the power lines, and even Mitch is like, "Huh, that's interesting."
Another great moment in this scene is so she's back at Annie's house, Melanie is, and then Mitch calls Annie and says, "I'd like to talk to Melanie." So
Yeah,
Melanie gets on the phone, and basically Mitch is saying, setting us up for the next bird scene,
yeah,
basically saying, "I really need you to come over tomorrow. You know, Kathy really wants you to come. She's really excited about the birds." And Annie is on the couch or
yeah.
on this like poltrona, a sofa, and she's got her head back and she's like waiting for it and waiting for it. And finally she's like, okay, I'll go. And Annie's like, like she head goes back and she's completely depressed. And there's all these
I know, it's so
moments of
sad.
just like, yeah, desperation
Yeah,
amongst these women based on, you know, a pretty vapid guy who wears a
yeah,
little scarf around his neck and is
yeah.
kind of weird. I don't even know what to say about him. He is the most uncompelling character of the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny too because, like, there's the classic, like, "Should I go? I don't know. Do you wanna go?" Between Annie and and Melanie. It's like, "Just go if you wanna go, because fucking I wasn't invited, you asshole," you know?
She's like, I'm going to be there as the
"Oh,
hired
right, I
help.
forgot she is." Yeah, it's just like the help, you're right. "At least
Oh
you
my
get to try to
god.
be the girlfriend, bitch," you know?
Exactly. And even during the party, like, you know, she sees them like, anyway, let's go to the
Yeah,
party.
and at the party, it's great 'cause Mitch just starts laying on her again. They're out walking in this beautiful, you know, picturesque, like, looking over it's low tide, so you can see 20, 30 yards into the bay, and the classic, like, the boats that are kinda sitting on the bay's floor until the water comes back in. I love that, which is so true. That happens all the time. Those anchored boats that are suddenly like they're like, "Wow, that's just sitting on the ground," because it's
Yeah.
low tide. And, um, and he starts laying into her again. It's like, "What do you do for a job?" Like, you know, "What's up with your," you know, and he starts questioning her about, like, what a mother's supposed to be, and, like, "You need a mother's care, my child," is this one line he throws at
That's
her, and
right.
you're like, "Damn, man, like, stop babying this woman. I thought you, like, are interested in her." And he's just really, really infantizing a lot infantilizing her. Yeah, I got that right.
You did.
Um,
You nailed it.
and he's just an ass, right?
Oh my god. And then he brings up the mother. You know, he's like, "What do you do?" And she's like, "Well, actually, I go to semantics classes at Berkeley and learn post-structuralist thought." Like there's this early like, you know, she's post-structural thought. I'm like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Where did that come from?" But then on the other day, she's raising money, you
Yeah,
know,
she's
for these
volunteering. Yeah.
yeah, and she's like doing cool shit. And he's like, "You need a mother's love." And she's like, "What do you know about my mother?" Another Norman Bates moment
Yeah.
where she turns on him. And there's this crazy exchange where she says, "So you don't think, you know, how does it go, Michael? You have it written down, but there's this
Well,
kind of back and forth about the mom
yeah.
that's really strange and completely unresolved,
Well,
if you will.
she talks about, like, how her mother ditched her when she was very young, so she never had a mother, right, in her life. It was just like
When
just
she was 11.
yeah, newspaper man dad who's, holding the fort, and she says, "It's there's something about, like, do you know" oh, it's really oh, this is what he asked. He says, "Do you know what a mother's love is?" Like, it's such a
Yeah,
weird fucking
such a
question,
weird.
right? You know? And it's like he's interrogating her as like, again, like a child. It's like, "Do you understand what your behavior means? You know, do you understand these things? I'm not quite sure." And so he's sticking it to her. But then, oh my God, thank God, because all this dysfunction needs to be attacked, and it's attacked in mass by seagulls that attack
But
the kids'
before we
party.
get there, and it's like actually as this back and forth is going, and I found it, it's like you need a mother's care, my child, he's saying. And
Yeah.
then she's saying, not my mother's. And then she talks about her mom and freaks
Oh,
out.
right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then she says,
What?
he says, you know what a mother's love is? Oh, no, she says that to Mitch. Do you know what a mother's love is? And
Yeah.
Mitch says, yes, I do. And Melanie says, it's better to be ditched. And Mitch is like, no, I don't think so. He's like a little confused. He's like, what? I don't think so. And then there's just complete unanchoring there
Yeah.
of like, she finally finds him in a moment where he's just confused. All the rest of the time, he's pounding her,
Yeah.
cross-examining her. It's at that moment where she's like, so you think it's better to be ditched, to ditch your mom, or be ditched by your mom? And he gets completely flummoxed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And so again, the dysfunction is attacked, right? And which is awesome. And so, get the children. Ah! It's just great.
Such a great, and there are some scenes there with like a
Yeah.
bird sitting on this young girl, like going at her neck. It's
Yeah.
like, oh man. And
These
then,
are all the mechanical birds that are just like
oh,
picking at the
it's
hair of the like
so
nice little
bad.
braids of like little girls and stuff like that. And Lydia is yelling, Mitch, what's happening?
Yeah.
And
Get the
so
kids inside. And then the kids are all running to the
they're all
dunes.
running everywhere. Yeah. No one does the obvious thing, like it's just like find shelter. It's
Oh,
like a Looney Tunes cartoon. It's kind of awesome. But this leads to it abates at a certain point, and then everybody's retreated to their spaces. Annie's gone home. The kids are all fine. Like it's all good, right? No problem. And suddenly we're back in the house, and now with this trauma on the table, Melody's now invited herself, or is being invited for yet another dinner. All right. And they all sit because it's like they've had their party. And I love this scene, how it starts. It's like, oh, they're going to have a nice casual dinner. Like they all have their plates in hand and they're sitting by the hearth. They're sitting on like comfy chairs and in the sofa. It's like, that seems like a great post-party dinner, right? Like you got your leftovers, you pick what you want. You got your plate. You're going to sit down in the nice comfy chair. You don't have to sit in the stiff chairs and have formal conversation and like worry about all your place settings and blah, blah, blah. But man, is that destroyed instantly.
Exactly. You got to field maybe a couple of phone calls from angry parents from the,
Yeah.
from the party, but
Yeah.
it's all manageable
Until the sparrows. Ah!
this is a crazy. Technically, it's a wild scene. This one
Yeah.
too, because you could see some of the effects, but it's
Yeah.
pretty convincing.
Yeah, yeah. And they really did probably flood the space with real sparrows. And there's like literally like hundreds of them. And this of course leads to epic chaos and China breaking and this leads to the final moment where, you know, they get the police involved and they're the classic obstructionist bureaucrats that are like, wait, what? I don't think so, Lydia. They're like just really dopey,
Were the kids angering the gulls?
No, they were attacked, Al. Attacked.
Exactly.
They were just playing games, Al.
I think these birds were looking for light. It was a fucking fireplace that wasn't lit.
And during this conversation, but the interesting part is Lydia is doing Lydia things. Like we're learning that Lydia is not, emotionally connected to her family members in a healthy way. So what does she do? She manages house as an alternative, which is not surprising. Like in a funny ways, the more I've talked about, I've been reading my own notes and stuff, I get more and more sympathetic for Lydia because this is this person who is surviving a life without the love of her life. And if it's anything like, what's the best one we saw, the movie that we started the elder parents with,
Tokyo Story.
No, The Way Things Were.
Oh, that's right.
When in The Way Things Were, they're forced to live apart from one another. And the notion, even if they're make for tomorrow. That was it. Yeah. Thank you. And, the sympathy, to be someone who's spent 20, 30, gone through the Great Depression probably with this man, and it's been probably a 40-year relationship and that's over. And she's unmoored, understandably, and her trying to moor herself through the norms of a well-kept home is understandable. And
Yeah.
this is what Lydia Melanie this whole time is spying this and paying attention to Lydia and how she's really starting to lose it a bit, right?
Yeah, she's going to picking up all the pieces of china.
Like,
She's obviously adjusting the husband's portrait, which sits there larger than life
yeah,
between them, because he's in the room even though he's gone.
yeah,
And to your point, yeah, she's, her very kind of stern, cold exterior is really hiding the fact that she has been abandoned by her husband, love of his life, dying,
yeah.
and then now losing her oldest son potentially as a result of someone like Melanie Daniels or Annie Hayworth. Like, it's completely understandable. She becomes a real character.
Yeah. And so Melanie spends the night, and her being, pushed into the family, and she's kind of, none of these things have been, what's interesting about Melanie's transformations, if you will, is none of them are really her choice. Like, she keeps getting kind of thrust into them. The first one she thrust herself into, right? She made this, adventurous trip with two lovebirds from San Francisco to find Mitch and leave this like snazzy. But ever since that, she's been kind of compelled into these spaces, like Mitch shoving her into these uncomfortable thought spaces, if you will, like infantilizing her. And now she's finally, and it's so great because the next morning when she wakes up, she's literally wearing the gown that she bought at the country store, and she looks like a child,
Totally. Yeah.
and and it's very funny, and it's presented as like Mitch, he's working the land outside, he's tilling the soil. Lydia's off to do errands, and she's just waking up while everybody's out and working, like a child that's in her own bedroom. And you're just like, man, this is so freaking weird. Um, but this is immediately like, so this was a role. Yet the next role, she played child in the family. It's like, oh, maybe that'll fit. Let's see how this one goes, But this one's immediately broken up with Lydia's errand is to go see the neighbor Dan and see on his chickens and like how they weren't eating feed either. That was the one of the early odd bird behaviors that was presented. And Lydia runs into Dan in his bedroom and his eyes have been poked out. It's a very Hitchcock like reveal, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and it is like still like the skull and the
Yeah.
blood running from it, and then there's dead birds around, and you see it. But what was interesting to me about that scene was obviously you're seeing the dead farmer, but Lydia's kind of escape from that,
Mm-hmm.
where she completely falls apart. Like, she's been keeping it together, and she's
Yeah.
kind of, like you said,
Yeah.
like, but at this point, like, she's a mess.
Yeah.
And, she gets back in the car, loses her purse, is running into the cool pickup truck that they have. There's some great cars in this movie. The Galaxy 500 that Mitch drives,
Yeah.
that awesome pickup truck, and then obviously the Aston Martin's next level. But she gets in the truck, and then she drives, speeds home across the farm.
Yeah.
And then Mitch and Melanie are there,
Yeah.
and they come to her and they're like, he's like, Mom, what's wrong? He always says dear, which is so weird.
Yeah.
Dear,
Weird.
what's wrong, dear? And she comes out of the car and she's kind of still unstable. And they come to her one on each side, and she just pushes through them like a
Yep.
running back going through defenders and runs inside. It's such a great moment.
And what's so great about it is she's undone, and this leads to immediately Melanie's compelled into yet another role. And she tries on domestic bliss because finally, and it's so bizarre, finally, suddenly we have Mitch and Melanie embracing in the kitchen like he's about to go off to work. She's pouring him coffee, and he kisses her on the neck and brings her around to the doorway, and they embrace and kiss. And she's like, oh, Mitch, be careful. Like, it's like wild. You're just like,
It's
what the
weird. Yeah,
fuck? It's
you
like,
weren't ready for that, and it's
no.
like the '50s, like,
Yeah.
you're right, it's perfect, it's like sitcom, like, "I gotta go over to the farm and see what's going on."
Yeah.
"It's alright, honey. Be careful," right?
Yeah.
"Stay safe."
And so now suddenly we have Melanie who's compelled into the role of like, I'm a doting wife and soon to be, a mother. And this is what leads to this wonderful scene between she and Lydia, or she was making tea for Lydia and brings it in. And Lydia finally spells out her story to her and like is willing to be vulnerable. She talks about how her husband was basically the center of all the emotional activity. Like he was the one who could get to the level of the children and engage them. Which is such an amazing thing. Like she's just basically admitting I was not particularly motherly. Like I didn't do that job
Yeah,
well, which is really interesting, right?
totally. Yeah.
And that's not something you see like that. That's pretty often. We don't get that role, which is a real role. Like it's not like automatic by any stretch of the imagination. And, all the strength, she called it the strength. I wish I had more strength. I wish I could be as strong in it. But the funny thing is, even though she's talking about strength, his strength was his domesticity that she's describing, which is really awesome. I love that so much. Um, and she finally at the end says thank you to Lydia, but at the same time, she's like, I'm freaking out about Kathy. I'm freaking out about Kathy. Kathy's at school. We'll go check on her. And will you go check on her? And so this leads to the next big scene. Like, and this is like a classic, compelling kind of classic like action movie where there's like set piece being lined up one after the
Yeah.
other, right? If you will.
Oh, and this is the most famous one, I
Yeah.
think, in the movie, right? So she
Yeah.
goes to the one-room schoolhouse, and I didn't pick this up until I saw it in the notes. And in the one-room schoolhouse, what are they singing, Michael?
Oh, what are they singing? They're singing. Wait, I love this. I brought her home by the light of the moon. Ristlety, rostlety, hey, Donny, docility, nickety, knackety, rustical quality, willowty, wallowty, now. And it's basically this like rhyme, like little children's rhyme about a man bemoaning this wife he married that isn't caring for the home. And it's curdling and rotten and unkept. Combed her hair but once a year, swept the floor but once a year, churns the butter in her dad's old boot. The butter came out like grizzly gray. The cheese it took legs and ran away. Rustical quality, nickety knackety, willety wallety, now. And it's just like, whoa. And at the same time, while they're just singing about this decaying like relationship and home, the crows are gathering on the jungle gym. And Melanie's just like, what the fuck?
And she's like, "Come out here, I have to talk to you." And it's great
Yeah.
because the character who plays Annie, Suzanne Pleshette, is like conducting. It's like do do
Yeah.
do 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 do, like, and the
Yeah.
kids are in it, like
Yeah,
it's a
it's like
real like
it's like
choir.
Little House on the Prairie, man. It's so weird. It's like,
It's crazy.
it's like, yeah, early American, like settlers type of schoolhouse rather than reality. Yeah,
Which
it's
goes back also to that moment you talk about with the horse. And
yeah,
like he is playing a little bit with this sense of time
yeah,
and where Melanie fits in there, right? And I think that's part of the struggle. Like, obviously, she's starting to create a bridge with, her potential mother-in-law. And, there's also the daughter she has to go, or the sister she has to go and save, right? And
yeah.
even with the character of Annie, it's not like they're not competitive in that same way,
No.
right? There's this sense of almost understanding of the plight,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
there's it's like again, it's that relationship between the women
yeah,
that really define this film. And
yeah.
they're the ones who are kind of at the head of action. Usually it's like what we saw with Mitch today. He's going to the farm. He's nowhere near where the action is
Mm-mm.
happening, but he comes in and he's like, "Oh, wait, I forgot my little scarf. Let me tie it on and then
Yeah.
figure something out."
Yeah, I mean, Annie knows she's kind of doomed. Like this guy is not gonna. He's like saddled to his mother, but he's also saddled to his like independence, right? He's like a client, like, I can glide in and be the hero to my little sister and to my mother, and even to Annie, who's still hanging on. I could have her back anytime I ever wanted, right?
Yes,
Um,
I
and
agree.
so and so, bird attack number 3. Ah!
This one is insane.
It's I can't help it. These are just fun. So like, yeah, they play fire drill and they try to exit. And it's literally it's so great because it's the kind of the blocking of the situation. Like the town is down the fishing town where the work area of town is down the hill. It's like San Francisco. It's up this, and the school is way up this steep hill, and it's this entire like kids flying out. It's like weapons. They're all flying out of their space and like
It's like,
gliding, just flying as fast as they can away from these birds that are attacking them.
and the
Um,
schoolhouse looks like the Psycho house.
yeah, it's really
It's
nutty. It's
on
very
the hill,
gothic,
you
and yeah,
see
it's
it, it's super
old.
gothic, so, like,
Yeah,
there's also
yeah,
that, you know?
yeah, and it feels very much uncared, like it needs a lot of attention. But it, like all of the bird attacks so far, they there's like moments of stress, and kids are eventually inevitably a couple fall, but they pick them up and they hide in the car. But then suddenly it cuts to, oh, it's fine again. And this leads to probably the most comical scene of the whole film when they're all in the diner, like everybody's starting to finally go like, what the fuck's happening here, man? And we
It's
get
like a
like
Stephen King. That whole scene's like out of Stephen King, right? Like
yeah,
The Mist or something like, something's happening in the mist. It's a
yeah.
religious revolution. God is punishing us. And then the
But
ornithologist comes out. It's
but
so great.
But just like, let's talk about this. Like, it's a school day. So what does that mean? It's a weekday afternoon. And what's going on in this diner on weekdays? We got families having Bloody Marys and a town drunk full and is not in a dark, dingy bar, like in the nice, bright diner. And it's like, in the diner owner, it's like, this town is like really whacked. I do not know what's going. It's like at first I'm
Again,
like,
like
this is
Stephen King.
yeah, it's like, are these tourists? And that would make sense. They're tourists, but it's like, no, it's a mom who's like yelling. Maybe she is a tourist with her kids. That would make sense. But the fact that there's a town drunk at like 11 in the morning or 12 in the afternoon is like doing his fire and brimstone speech. They're coming. God is punishing us, right?
And then there's the other guy who comes in who's like, I hate those dirty birds. Kill them all. And then
Yeah,
the ornithologist is like,
yeah. It's like,
well,
and by the way, there's an ornithologist that's around town.
she's
There's
great.
6 billion of them, and we wouldn't stand a chance. They decided to attack us, and then the mother is like really like she's representing this like fear of the of change. Like she's like our proxy for the past and how we need to just go back into our homes and close our doors and windows and let the future glide by and hope we can stay okay. But of course, what happens? Another attack.
It's like it's timed. It must be timed.
Yeah.
Anytime they're trying to deal with the situation, the birds
Yeah.
come. But this is the attack you were talking about. And this is another like technical feat because it starts with that comic with the guy
The
who's,
gas attendant who gets like he's like a character who is like minding his own business and like gets hit by a baseball and like just like topples over.
but I mean, there is so much going on in this scene, like between the aerial view of what then becomes the fire, right? And I love
Mm.
how Melanie Daniels watches the fire and he does the shots
Yeah,
like
yeah,
by isolating her looking,
yeah,
and it almost is like old school. But then you get the point of view of the birds from up top.
yeah,
This is when you get the horse carriage coming in around the corner and losing all of its fruit.
yeah,
Like it just is this scene out of it really creates a great, sense of pandemonium. And Melanie Daniels is in the center of it in a phone booth watching it all happen and experiencing it. And there's water, fire. It's just in terms of creating that sense of chaos
yeah.
that we really even haven't talked about yet. Like, okay, here we are. We're in
Mhm.
our fourth serious bird attack, and we have more to go. What the? I mean, do we even want to talk about like what the birds symbolize? Like what the birds are?
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, like, what I find is interesting, the way I've read it in general, it's like there's always these moments of typically like dysfunction being spoken about. And so the birds gather. Like the best one is the song itself. Like the song is literally singing about a man who his he's gotten married. He's picturing this wonderful life he's going to have, but it's like, nope, she's not cleaning the floor. She's not staying pretty. She's not providing the food on the table. This is a disaster. And in that image of what a family is supposed to be and complaining about it, the birds are gathering, right?
Yeah.
And similarly as
So
like,
that was like at the birthday party when
yeah,
they started talking about her mother. Is it like she summoned the birds? Are they some sort of like psychological summon that are,
yeah,
seen as this kind of physical instance of a presence of thousands of birds that then
yeah.
attack you?
Yeah, and the same thing, it's really the woman complaining about like you're scaring the children, your conversations are so bad and saying we should all just go back to our houses and lock ourselves away. Again, the birds attack. And I think to me that's very much, I mean, and it is made, it's finally manifested in this idea of like the birds attacking the dysfunctional home in the final scene, if you will,
Yeah.
right? Where, again, the birds calm down and they find Kathy, and sadly, Annie's bitten it. In saving Kathy, she's been mauled to death in front of her own home. It's pretty nasty. And so that they go literally to bunker, as this woman suggests, we need to bunker down her house. And there's like, Mitch is like hammering wood over all the windows and they're hammering doors shut, and they all go inside and they all sit, and this is the scene that is presented here. So this is where Lydia is most displaced, if you will, and Mitch is most lost, if you will. He's finally kind of unmoored to a
Yeah.
certain extent. He's playing the role of like, I'm doing it. I'm taking care of this family. I'm boarding of us. I'm the father of this family. I'll make everybody safe. But if you look at him in this moment, he's completely stumped. He's like, fuck, this is nuts. And Lydia or Melanie is like cradling Kathy, who's seen her teacher get murdered while saving her life. Yeah, it's good to bring it up. And then finally, you have Lydia staring at what the future might be in Lydia, at Melanie. And then, of course, above it all is the dead patriarch looking at them and is absolutely helpless to help, right? Helpless to help. so so it's the probably the best like picture of this family situation, and they're all there knowing they're going to be attacked for trying to hide behind this dysfunctional structure. And sure enough, it comes. And sure enough, Mitch is successful a while. Like he literally, there's this, it's kind of funny. He's like the birds find their way through the gaps in one of the boards or a shutter. And he's like getting pecked to death in his hand as he's trying to close the shutter. And it's the mechanical birds.
I mean, it's so much like Night of the Living Dead. Like
Uh,
they're all in this house, and it has very similar kind of, so much comes from this movie when you think about it in terms of
yeah.
other horror like Psycho. But there is like they're stuck in this house, and there's families stuck in the house in Night of the Living Dead, and people lose it or start to go off their mind, out of
Right.
their mind, become unmoored. And there's that sense that he's trying to keep it together, but
Oh, and I forgot also, like Lydia's already freaked out and said, you don't know, if only your father was here. She like breaks, right?
yeah.
And she chides Mitch, you're not up to the task, right? You're not the man your father was. Damn. That is harsh stuff. And so, in like every bird attack, it subsides. At first, like Mitch has prevailed. I've protected my family. We've stayed intact in this house. And in the calm, he falls asleep at the wheel. And Melanie, exploring her role of being, a motherly and also a caretaker of the family, she hears some rustling of what turns out to be birds, and she goes upstairs, and this is when she's brutalized. Like this is literally brutalized in terms of 4 days of shooting, where Alfred Hitchcock had handlers with gloves throwing ravens and seagulls and at her, and crows. And not only is she almost killed, but her whole facade. One of the things that's so interesting about this film is Kathy has been wearing the same outfit for like 3 days now.
Yeah.
And it's this perfectly coiffed, like woman's suit that's this lime green, and it's like you get a sense it's this part, it's probably made of wool, but a really thin, soft wool, so it actually can go multiple days without getting dirty. And she's had this fur coat on far too long for many of these scenes as
So
well. And
it's a
her,
striking suit. And
yeah,
it's funny, before you go there, like,
yeah,
I watched this, I got into this movie, really into it in the 90s, and I was dating this girl in Los Angeles, and she's like, and we loved, like, this film was a movie we really liked, but she's like, the only problem with it is she never changes clothes, and I really like to see the different clothes. And it's
yeah,
true. She's in the same outfit.
same outfit, but it's literally shredded. Like she's finally, and it is like the drunk man's fire and brimstone speech. It's like, we need to destroy this current family, this world, before we can build a new future. And it's like, is that what Hitchcock's really saying? You feel like she's finally torn apart and she's made catatonic. It's like, you're not the mother of this home, and is made, she's now catatonic. And
Yeah.
they have to, and you think like, fuck, they're fucked, right? They don't know what to do. And then Mitch like does the gingerly thing. He's like, I'm gonna venture outside. I'm gonna wade my way through these massive birds that are calm, but he takes their bites, their little nips and nibbles
Yeah.
at him. And
That's
he
so
and he
crazy.
finds, it's like, we're gonna take the Aston Martian because it's fucking fast. And he's like, yeah, you are. I don't know how you're gonna fit in that thing, but yeah, you are.
It's the car of the future.
Yeah. And he pulls it up, really gingerly and slowly. And this is him, like, I think this is the idea. It's like, and they bring out, Melanie, and she's barely able to handle it as she sees all the birds as they walk her out the door. And they put her in the seat, and this is finally, Lydia gets her moment.
Yeah.
She's cradling Melanie, and she's giving real emotional care. She's truly attentive. She's not just, as I put in the notes, she's not just it's not just an arranging of dishes sort of way of mothering, right? And keeping things in order and caring for the household rather than the people in the home itself. Um, and Melanie gets to look up into the eyes of a mother for the first time,
Exactly. She
you
gets
know?
that mother that she didn't have.
Yeah.
And yeah, but that's why it's like, you know, I so what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, where do you go to some degree with, if you write Mitch out a little bit, right? I think this is really a story about the various generations of women trying to understand what that future looked like. I mean, the whole title of the movie, The Birds, right, is British slang for the women,
Mm.
right?
Oh
And it's
yeah.
like, this is really a story about for me, about a generational struggle about what that future is and how unknown it is, right? And whether these birds attack each other, right? Or whether they kind of come together, because usually those species don't work together according to ornithologists, but whether they come together actually and exert their power, right? And there's this kind of interesting, and I don't know. I watching this movie again, I was like, God, there's so many ways I could go with it. And
Yeah.
it is so rich. And obviously, he's doing everything he's doing with the psychoanalysis and the psychology. But at the center of it, which is what was so good for this podcast, and in fact, many ways, the series,
Yeah. I think we
was
should
the
talk about that.
family,
Yeah.
right?
And I think it's probably with the exception of The Man Who Knew Too Much, which is, no, I'm sorry, Strangers on a Train. These were very much, every single one of them, about a girl or a woman kind of making ways through a time period of what they could have or not have given their circumstances, and how are they going to navigate it. In Shadow of a Doubt, we have Charlie, who's imagining a better, more exciting future than her plain, boring suburban town. And it's Uncle Charlie that presents this wild life and opportunities, but he turns out to be a killer, right? He
Yeah.
turns out to be this terrible person. And so it's 1943. So she retreats to the stability of suburban life. And that's okay, because it's 1943. War is on. We need safety. But, Strangers on a Train is funny because that's like, the women are very much like part of the patriarchy. Not sorry, very much. Yeah, they are like they're the stability of wealthy family, and I love them, Barbara, Babs, and what is it, Anne, and the way that they kind of control the Morton family, and it's kind of cool. But it's the man who knew too much that I was found Joe one of the most compelling, because she's a woman who retreats. She was a professional woman. She was a singer. She had this incredible life. Maybe it was a little wild, but she was known around the world. But she retreats to what she thinks she's supposed to do. She finds a nice country doctor and has a baby and retreats to the normal society. And the whole film is like, wait, that's maybe a really bad fucking idea, you know?
And on the other side of that, and I agree with that entirely, on the other side of that, you have, Vivian Lee's character, or not Vivian Lee, I always say that. Uh,
Janet Leigh.
Janet Leigh's character, who's taken the opposite route,
Yeah.
who's a working girl who's just trying to make a buck, been 10 years so she can get married, and she takes the shortcut.
Yep.
And she robs, $40,000 from this complete jackass rich guy who comes, buying his daughter and everyone else around him happiness. And that first part of that movie was yet another instance in this Hitchcock like women and family saga that has been super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think like, we have gone through this pathway and we were very surprised. I was surprised because I've seen many Hitchcock movies, but I've studied them more from the perspective of like, I think I'm going to be a filmmaker. I want to see how he shoots and makes all these stories. But it was very much a surprise to see, I've known about like Hitchcock and his women, and, whether it's North by Northwest or those that was, it's a side, I'm thinking more of like, look, what's the Rear Window, where they're just kind of more objects, if you will, like they're part of the performance of the day. But that's not true. And these women were really incredible, and I really loved, especially this ending of poor Melanie, like trying to navigate through this way and getting very little sympathy for the most part from Mitch, if you will. He's protecting her in this way that he thinks he's supposed to, or correcting her. And I mean, and thank God she finally gets what she really needs, which is like she just needs this other person to see who she is. And Lydia needs it too. And that's what's so cool, ultimately.
Yeah. And that final connection comes between the women.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
Very
And,
much so.
and that's super interesting to me about this, because it is a family movie in that, like, the real struggle is not whether or not they get together like in a screwball comedy. Because
No.
that never really, it's about whether, she'll be able to find a mother and whether that mother will be able to have real attachment to the kid in a different way. Exactly what we didn't get in Psycho. And so it's an interesting other side to Psycho in my mind. And it kind of is like the opposite point. But like, again, with these movies, like what I love so much about them, as we did with our 70s horror series, is Hitchcock kind of introduced, and I'm sure it happened before Hitchcock, so I'm not saying this started with Hitchcock, but in Psycho and now in The Birds, you have the horror not only about shock and awe and fear, but also about the boiling up tensions of that society at a particular moment. And, I think Birds does that brilliantly.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. And it ends, and like, it almost makes me think of like Night at the Comet, the way it has this like kind of post-apocalyptic ending. Like, you're just like, it's this new refugee family that are like, well, let's figure this out. We're going to literally drive off into this unknown space of what's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's great too, because it's that final scene where, it is apocalypse, but you also know, if the movie is any teacher to you, that you'll get through that. There will be a calm after the storm, and then what have you learned?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so it's it's
very cool. All right, that was our last one with Hitchcock. Thanks everybody for tuning in yet again, and have a great night or day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Morning, afternoon.